Hello YouTube family. I wanted to start a video that I haven't done in a long time, and this will be part of my line breeding series of videos. In today's video we're going to cover three topics. We're going to cover line breeding and how to create a line, and there are going to be two topics involved. The first will be starting with mildly related dogs. By mildly I mean in the fourth generation. That's your starting point. And then the second topic will be completely outcrossed dogs or scattered bred dogs as your starting point. And then we're going to talk about a different topic, which is how to create a breed from three breeds. Okay, so on my channel, you see that line breeding, mildly related dogs, scatterbred dogs, no relationship whatsoever, and how would you create a new breed? I don't think we ever covered that topic. Now on my channel there's a lot of videos. You saw video 3A, which talks about the three techniques: first cousin marriage, uncle to niece or aunt to nephew marriage, and half sibling marriage. Then in some cases breeding back to the original father or grandfather as a technique. You saw that video, video 3A, a link will appear below. You saw a video on brackets formula, a link will appear below. You saw my collaboration with Raul of the QBN channel and Joe from the NWA Cane Corso channel about line breeding. You saw a video of how to calculate COI and COR as a measure of risk. So you're creating a breeding program, but you're minimizing risk through intelligent use of calculations of COI and embark testing for genetic diseases to reduce the chance of culling. By that I mean spaying and neutering. I don't mean anything else but the word culling. So you saw how you can improve the gene pool by selecting for traits and bringing forth individuals which have the highest performance of your particular goal. So, but you never saw a video where I put it all together. In other words, here's a method, line breeding using brackets formula. Here's a method involving cousins. Here's a video involving backbreeding. Here's a video involving backmassing, which is accumulating a common ancestor several times in a pedigree in order to increase his allelic frequency. You saw a video with Jim of Shorty Jacks regarding slow accumulation of genes of a common ancestor, let's say in the fourth generation, which is second cousins, by bringing multiple second cousins together of that common ancestor until he's repeated often enough in the pedigree that he starts having significant influence. So you saw a video on that. So you saw this technique and that technique, but you never saw a video where it's all put together of how to create a breeding program. What I decided to do, I'm going to take this off a little bit. Here. What I decided to do is I decided to put together a video where we bring it all together. Sorry for that, putting that off screen. How would you put all these ideas into creating a breeding program? Now I'm going to give general ideas to you, the audience, in this video, but I'm available for a small consultation fee for those who want to scan their dog's pedigrees to me and you want me to design a breeding program for you. I'm available for a small consultation fee through either PayPal or Patreon. A link will appear below, or just email me and we'll do a consultation. For those of you who are interested, we can do that, about a 1-hour consultation, and we can do a consultation. Provided you provide me pedigrees, we can advise you. I will not know your breeding goals. You have to be very clear what your goals are for me to advise you. But my consultation is not specific to a particular breed. It is not breed specific, it is general. So you have to understand your own breed I can't tell you that because I can't know everything about every breed. But I'll give it to you from a genetic perspective, not from a specific to your breed perspective. But that is available now. I'm thinking, so many people have asked me, I decided to offer this as a small service that I can give you a small consultation fee. Okay, so we're going to talk about line breeding of mildly related dogs and scatterbred dogs. How would you start a breeding program and how to create a new breed? Before we talk about these specific two videos, I think the most important thing to address, and I'm going to go on a limb here, the most important thing to address is, well, why are you doing this? Why is this important to you as a breeder? What are your goals, both in terms of your breed, or what are your financial goals in creating a line of breed of dogs? This light is a little too hot, so I'm going to cut down the light of this light. I hope you can still see me well enough because the lighting is overhead and I don't have a professional film studio here. So I hope you can still see well. The truth about breeding and the economy that no one will tell you. So the first thing is we're going to do an intro about breeding and the economy, because before we talk about specific techniques as a lesson in biology, let's talk about the business of breeding dogs before we talk about breeding of dogs themselves, because nobody talks about that. Now, I saw videos on YouTube where people claim it's $1 million business. I saw other videos on YouTube where people explain how to get microloans from your credit union or bank or other lending institution to borrow money to create a breeding business. You want to build buildings and kennels and get property to hold a lot of dogs. There are loans available backed by the SBA.gov where you can apply for a microloan to start a breeding facility if you can prove your case and you have enough of a business case. There are lenders out there. But that's not the purpose of this video. So here's the situation now, guys. According to census.gov, the average salary in the US is $50,000 per year. Across the entire United States as a whole, not any given part of the country. Now, the cost of living has been rising and rising over the last 40 years, and trickle-down economics does not work. It simply does not trickle down. There's no such thing as trickle-down economics. If the rich get tax breaks, they keep it for themselves. They don't trickle it down to the working class. The tax structure is set to favor people who own businesses, not people who are employees. Unfortunately, our school system does not teach you how to be a business person. They don't even teach you how to balance a checkbook. They indoctrinate you to be a good employee. They tell you where to sit, be quiet during the lesson, when to go to the bathroom, when to go outside for some fresh air, when to go for band practice, when to go for soccer practice. And so your life becomes regimented and quiet. You're meant to be subservient and on a wheel of debt, on a roller coaster wheel, where everything you make is just a little bit above what you spend. And it keeps you in debt, and it keeps you in a revolving wheel of debt, income, debt, income, debt, income, until you're too old and you die to enjoy life. And that's the sad reality for most people. We have an oligarchical system right now, where billionaires control the government and billionaires run the economy. They've always run the economy, but it was never this direct. Now, this is not a political channel, and this is not a personal finance channel. I'm just giving you facts. It's in your face, it's obvious. So, what is the economy like? Well, according to government sources I've read, and newspaper articles, we have the highest default rate on automobile loans in the last 90 days than we've ever had. During the COVID crisis, car dealers were marking cars up by $10,000 to $15,000 above sticker price. Now, most people can't afford a $45,000 car. If you make $50,000 a year, what the hell are you doing buying a $30,000 depreciating asset? You can't afford a $30,000 car if you're earning $50,000 a year. But the truth of the matter is, people need transportation. Not everybody lives in cities where a bus is every 15 minutes, and you can get on a bus and it takes you wherever you need to go. People need transportation. The cost of transportation, the average car went from $30,000 to $35,000 to $45,000. and the car manufacturers raise prices through the roof. How are people supposed to afford a $45,000 automobile to get to work? And if you can't get to work, or your car breaks down, you're going to be fired from your job, and then you might lose your ability to pay your apartment or your mortgage. So a car is a very important reality for most people, right? So this is the reality, that it takes two incomes nowadays to make a paycheck. It takes a lot of debt management to manage finances. And you have to be purposeful with your money. You have to create a budget and put a name to each item in your budget so that you're purposeful in managing your finances. Not just have it fly out the door and you don't know where it went, and your paycheck runs out faster before the month is over. That's how some people live, paycheck to paycheck, and they're only one paycheck away from being homeless. That is the reality of today's times that we're living in 2025. So with the car loans defaulting as much as they did, because the cars were exaggerated in value, and don't get me wrong guys, car dealerships are not going to fix this problem. If they could sell you a 1994 Toyota Camry for $25,000, they would. They'll add markup on top of markup. They'll put paint protection, alarm system, low jack for $750, which costs $20 to install. Car dealerships are notorious for begging the consumer as much as possible of every transaction possible. So who's responsible for fixing it? The lenders. Because if the lender cannot originate the loan to that car dealer, then that car dealer cannot gouge the consumer, knowing that the loan is paying that car and not the consumer's own pocket. Because if the car is repossessed, that dealer will still pay for the car. What happens later now is a credit problem, not the original dealer got paid for the car. So with car defaults at an all-time high, car prices at an all-time high, housing prices at an all-time high, you know the economy is heading toward a recession. And housing being such an important asset, people can no longer afford to buy houses. If 10% down of a $500,000 house, which is the average house in America, that's $50,000. Most people can't save $50,000 to put 10% down. Now when houses were $135,000, you could put together $13,000 with maybe 2 tax refunds, but $5,000 each. But $50,000, that's beyond most people's means. So with high prices for housing, high interest rate, right now a good credit person with a good credit score gets a car loan at 7 to 8%. A person with a bad credit score, double that, 13 to 16%. That increases your monthly payment and makes things unaffordable. Therefore, your chance of defaulting are very high because you can barely afford it in the first place. So, you know the economy is against you when the cost of food is high, the cost of water is high, housing is high. These three things, food, water, and housing, are the fundamental things you need to live. These are not things that are beyond your reach. God didn't create you to be broke. God created you to be bountiful. There's plenty of bounty of this earth. God created you to have a life of plenty, not to constantly struggle. So, what do you do in this situation? Well, what you do, some people, is they see, well, I like dogs. I like dogs anyhow. I have an affinity for dogs. I know how to manage them. I know how to train them. Let me start breeding dogs. And so they start breeding dogs as an economic solution to their problem. That is exactly the wrong reason to breed dogs. Why do I bring this up in the context of the economy? The reason I bring this up, and I'm referring to my own notes, so forgive me if I'm looking at the sheet here. You have to have a love of the breed to continue breeding. Now some breeds right now, and this is not to criticize any particular breeder, this is just a statement overall of the market as a whole. I'm not talking about any specific YouTuber, I'm only talking about the breed tendencies at the market at large, not any particular person on YouTube, just overall I'm talking. Okay, some breeds are only being sold because of the kind of breed they are. An example, take the French Bulldog. That's a breed which can barely breathe. It has such a short nose to create these very pronounced eyes that if it wasn't for humans doing a C-section to bring it out of the womb, and matings which were not through natural mechanism but through artificial insemination, this dog would not survive as a breed in nature. Any animal that requires human intervention in order to reproduce itself would not live in nature. But breeders are breeding these extreme dogs without a concern for their health and well-being, because let's say it's a small dog, it doesn't require a lot of food, it doesn't require a lot of space. You could have 20 dogs which are that small in a relatively small amount of space. You don't need a large amount of space to breed a dog that size. Or pocket bullies. From what I can see, it's a pit bull cross with a French bulldog, at least in my eyes. Maybe I'm wrong. But the reason it's popular is, let's say I can sell a puppy, let's say a pocket bully for $5,000. I don't know that's the price, but let's say it's the price. If the average litter is 4 puppies, you made $20,000. If it costs you $3,500 for a C-section, you still made a significant profit. Or let's say you take a French bulldog, you let's say make $15,000 selling 3 puppies at $5,000 a piece, and it costs you $3,500 to have that C-section to deliver them. You still made a substantial profit with a small number of puppies. So people are turning to certain breeds, breast-affiliate breeds in particular, because they're small, they don't eat much, and they command a high price. So people buy a $15,000 French bulldog. Now they're introducing long coat genetics into the breed because there's a demand for that cuteness plus a long coat. So people buy a dog for $15,000, not as a dog, but they treat it like they are buying a business venture, like an investment. Therefore, they're buying an overpriced animal, not for the animal, but they say, well, if I can buy $15,000, I therefore can sell it $15,000. And so they buy the animal as a business proposition, as a business investment. The reality is this prices of $15,000 is not going to last, because as soon as poor people who can barely afford their lifestyle start breeding, they overbreed. It's supply and demand. You're oversupplied the market, therefore prices go down. And so there's an overabundance of dogs in animal shelters, which come from people which can no longer take care of their dogs financially or otherwise. And this is not good for breeders, that dogs wind up in animal shelters and they're killed through no fault of their own. We must not be our own problem. We must not overproduce dogs in our zealousness to economically survive in a tough economy. We must not produce dogs which are deformed with breathing issues, because that's what's hot, that's what sells. These characteristics is what sells. That's not the right way to breed dogs. Because when you're breeding a dog, let's say you have a dog with a high rump, and another dog has a low rump, and you want to create an average where the rump is not so high, right? You breed this male with this female, hoping to be somewhere in the middle of these 2 characteristics. You're not breeding characteristic or trait to trait. You're breeding dog to dog. So you're breeding the entire animal, and the animal is not monogenetic traits, it's polygenetic traits. So a lot of genes are involved to make the total animal. So while you're trying to focus on the rump being too high, or you don't want to have splayed feet, and you want to have more straight feet, but what other characteristics are you breeding as a consequence of that? In other words, you're not breeding trait to trait, you're breeding dog to dog, and everything that comes in the genome of that animal. Now, you're breeding phenotypically. Let's talk about phenotypical breeding. Breeding by phenotype is breeding by how a dog looks, but its phenotype is an expression of its genotype. What do I mean? I'm white and I have blue eyes and I'm an Eastern European Jew. Okay? I was born in the former USSR, therefore I'm Eastern European. Anybody who's from Eastern Europe will look more like me. I have curly hair because I'm Jewish. I have a big nose because I'm Jewish. I have blue eyes because I have blue eyes. Now, a Middle Eastern Jew will look differently than me, will look more like an Arab. Okay? An Eastern European Jew will not look like an Arab, will look more like a Polak or a Czech. Okay? Because that's Eastern Europe. Now, so my phenotype, my body mass, my physical composition, my IGF growth hormone level, my ability to respond to disease. These are things you can't see on my outside, but they're part of me, they're part of my phenotype. My ability to have a certain body mass index for my height, my intelligence level, my overall appearance. Those are all my phenotype. But they're an expression of my genotype. What does that mean? The genes of people who come from Eastern Europe, of Jewish descent or Christian descent, but they're Eastern Europe. Somebody who is from Ethiopia will be black, have a dark skin color, and have a different phenotype. Their phenotype is an expression of their genotype. What you see is the expression of their genes, which is inside them. So when you're breeding dogs by phenotype, you're breeding by what you see, but what you see is an expression of the genotype. In other words, you're not seeing the genes, but you're seeing what's expressed on the outside as phenotype. So phenotypical breeding of animals involves breeding like to like. In other words, if an Eastern European marries another Eastern European, those physical traits will look Eastern European in the offspring. But an Eastern European marries somebody from Africa, the child will be of mixed race, and there will be an expression of both phenotypes because of two different genotypes. So what would I mean by that? Let's say I'm breeding a German Shepherd to another German Shepherd, and I'm breeding a black and tan to a bicolor. Am I breeding by phenotype? No, I'm breeding by two different colors. But could they have similar body structure, similar shoulder construction, similar muzzle shape, similar distance between the ears, far apart versus close together? Yes. So if you're breeding, let's say by color only, let's say you breed a black German Shepherd to another black German Shepherd, you're breeding by phenotype. The main thing you're focused on is color. So phenotypical breeding breeds dogs of similar appearance in the same breed based on their appearance. Now their appearance is a consequence of their genotype. Now, can you perpetuate those characteristics into the next generation without line breeding or inbreeding? No, you can't, because there's no prepotency and there's no repeatability of high allelic frequency. Anyhow, I digress into genetics. Let's get back to the main topic. The main topic is, guys, is that when you're breeding dogs, because this is what's hot, this is what sells, that's the wrong reason for breeding. You must love your breed to stay in the game for the long term. If you don't love your breed, don't breed it, because that is not a reason for breeding. You will not survive if you're... Today the Golden Doodle is hot. I've seen puppies sell for $5,500. They're a fashion statement. People who buy them may not know how to train them. I've seen a lot of poorly behaved Golden Doodles. They're a sweet dog, actually, because you've created two sweet breeds. A Golden Retriever is a very sweet breed, and a Poodle is a very sweet breed. But people buying them are buying what they think is the golden middle in terms of not shedding and non-allergic breed. But they could have just bought a giant Schnauzer, which is also hyperallergenic and has hair instead of fur. Or they could have bought a purebred Poodle. It's the novelty factor. It's that I have something different that nobody else has. In other words, people want something different, and that's why they're sold at a higher price. If tomorrow some other combination became the hot new topic and those puppies would sell at a different higher price point, they would switch in a heartbeat, because that is what makes them money. Similar to how people breed pocket bullies. If tomorrow, let's say the Great Pyrenees, I'm just making up an example, became the in breed, the breed you have to have, because some movie appeared making that your hot new dog that everybody wants, everybody would become all of a sudden Great Pyrenees breeders. Or the Belgian Malinois right now is very hot, but the wrong people are buying these dogs who don't understand the amount of prey drive they have, the amount of energy they have, and that these are mostly working dogs, not pets. So people are buying based on fads, just like they buy the latest iPhone because it's the latest. It has all the latest doodads. In other words, people are solving their economic problem by breeding what's hot and popular, because that gets them a higher price point per puppy, so that out of a small litter, or even a large litter, they're able to create a higher price per puppy, and therefore you don't need to breed as many puppies per year, because you're getting a higher price per puppy. So instead of breeding 2 litters, which are 10 puppies each, 20 puppies total in a year, at $2,500 per puppy, which is 20 gross profit, $22,500, and 22,500, you've made a total of 44,000 gross, 45,000. But you've made as much from one litter because it's an exciting breed, where instead of charging 2,500 per puppy, you can charge 5,000 per puppy, and with less puppies make the same money. You see, people have to put an effort into whelping the puppies. There's medical costs involved, doctor costs involved, advertising costs involved. So it's not all profit, there's costs involved. But if you can get an average price per puppy which is higher, you will make more profit. Now, so why are they doing it? Getting back to what I said, the economy is rough. When basic things like food and water are very expensive, people are looking for solutions. What's the solution you should look for? Properly manage your paycheck. Put a name to each budget item. Get rid of those damn credit cards. They're not credit cards, they should be called liability cards. Get rid of all your personal loans which are unsecured. Pay those off, guys. By you having those loans, you're in the wage slavery game. You're not in the financial freedom game. Until you get rid of your bad debt, by bad I mean debt which is depreciating assets, you will never get out of debt. No amount of dog breeding will solve your financial problem. Get rid of bad debt. Get a second job. I've worked 2 jobs many times in my life. Just do what you can to get out of debt. Don't use dog breeding as a means to an end. It's not. It might be supplemental income, but do it because you really enjoy animals, training, and you're breeding for a purpose. Like I breed for performance, so I breed for dogs which will work well in the sport of IGP. But that's for me. Other people are not into this sport, but I at least have a performance aspect in mind. The bottom line is that the need to breed because you're in economic trouble and you see this as a way to get out of economic trouble, breed for the love of the breed and don't look at this game as an economic business model. It's not. Get rid of your bad debt, manage your money, then get into some blue chip stocks. Companies like ExxonMobil, Coca-Cola, these companies have been around hundreds of years. In school, they don't teach what an ETF fund is, or what is a fund index fund. Get some education about what the stock market is and what it works like. Buy some real estate. Try to buy a house of your own if you currently don't have one. Invest in real estate. Invest in yourself, because what goes into here becomes what you get out of here. This attitude and this brain is what brings you the money. The money doesn't come from the tree. Go out and hunt for it. Go out and get it. Don't wait for it to come to you. Anyhow, I'm off my rant. I'm about to start my video on 3 breeding systems. I think this is an intro video, and the other video will be part 2 and part 3. Take care, guys. I will see you in a few minutes.